My name's Ellie, and if you were to look at my life now, you might not guess where I started. Born to a family that had more love than money, I learned early to stand on my own 2 feet. College was a dream too expensive to entertain, so straight out of high school, I was ringing up groceries at a local store. I turned 25, still punching that same clock, dreaming of something, anything, that might break the monotony. That's when Jack waltzed into my life. It was at a casual bash thrown by mutual friends. He had that easy smile and a way about him that just, I don't know, made you want to be around him. "Hey, I'm Jack. And who might you be?" he said, leaning against the kitchen counter with a beer in hand, eyes never leaving mine. "Ellie," I replied, trying not to show how his gaze made my heart race a bit. "Just Ellie." "Just Ellie, huh? Sounds like there's a story there waiting to be told." His charm was something else. He wasn't like the guys I knew, who mostly just grunted their way through conversations. Jack actually talked, laughed, and listened. We hit it off that night, talking about everything and nothing until the party dwindled and we were left under the dim porch light, reluctant to say goodbye. "You know, Ellie, I haven't had this much fun talking to someone in a long time. Can I see you again?" he asked, his tone hopeful. I nodded, feeling that flutter of excitement you get when something good begins. "Yeah, I'd like that." And see each other we did. Dates turned into a steady thing, and our steady thing turned into love, or at least, I thought it was love. 2 years later, Jack proposed at that same friend's backyard, under a sky lit up with stars. It was simple, no grand gestures, just him and me, and a ring that he was shaking to put on my finger. "You're it for me, Ellie. Marry me?" Of course, I said yes. I thought this was it, my happily ever after. The wedding was a modest affair, but filled with laughter and dancing. Our little apartment became the cozy nook of the world where we planned a future and built a life. Or tried to, anyway. Life doesn't always give you what you want, but sometimes it throws you exactly what you need. That's what I kept telling myself when I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but then, what good things in life are. I remember the morning I found out. The bathroom was steamy from my shower, and there I was, staring at a little stick that was about to tell me my future. Positive. My heart did somersaults. Excitement, fear, joy, panic, all of it mixing up inside me like a storm. Breaking the news to Jack wasn't easy. I knew money was tight, and babies? They don't just need love, they need diapers, clothes, and 1,000 other things we hadn't saved up for. But this felt right, if only to me. I waited for Jack to come home that evening. He was late, again. The clock ticked too loud as I rehearsed what to say. When he finally walked through the door, his face was tired, his shoulders slumped like he'd carried the world on them. "Jack, we need to talk," I started, my voice shaky. "What's up?" he asked, barely looking up as he dropped his keys on the table. I took a deep breath. "I'm pregnant." Jack froze, his eyes finally meeting mine. There was a silence, heavy and thick, before he finally spoke. "Pregnant? Ellie, how did this happen?" I almost laughed. Almost. "Well, you know how it happens, Jack. I was careful, we were careful, but sometimes life has other plans." He ran a hand through his hair, looking around the room as if he'd find some answer, or escape, scribbled on the walls. "We can't afford a baby right now, Ellie. We just can't. Things are tight as is." I felt a sting at his words, but I pushed on. "I know money's tight, but we can make this work. People do with much less. And I want this baby, Jack, I want this more than anything." Jack shook his head, frustration lining his face. "It's not just about money, Ellie. It's about us. Are we even ready to be parents?" I looked at him, really looked at him, trying to find the man I married in those troubled blue eyes. "I am. I'm ready. I can do more, work more. We can figure this out. Please, Jack, say you're with me on this." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he walked over to the fridge, opened it, and stared inside like he'd find some wisdom next to the leftover takeout. Finally, he shut it, leaned back against the counter, and sighed. Ellie, I'm not saying no because I don't love you or the idea of a family with you. But think about our lives, how we struggle with just the two of us. Bringing a kid into this mess doesn't seem fair. I felt tears prick at my eyes, but I blinked them back. Life's never fair, Jack. But it's ours to make better. I'm having this baby, with or without your blessing. I'd rather it be with, though. Jack looked at me then, really looked at me, as if seeing me for the first time. You're really set on this? Yeah, I am. The birth of our son Danny should have been the happiest moment of our lives, but for Jack and me, it was the start of the hardest times. Jack's absence grew more noticeable every day. He was either at work or just not there mentally when he was home. I remember one evening, a few months after Danny was born, I was rocking him back to sleep after a late-night fuss. Jack walked into the nursery, his face shadowed and tired. Ellie, we need to talk, he said, barely above a whisper. I looked up, holding Danny a bit closer. What's up? My voice was tired, worn out from nights of little sleep and days filled with too much alone. It's about this, he gestured vaguely around the room, his face strained. It's about us, about me. I can't do this. It's too much. I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean, you can't do this? Talk to me, Jack. What's going on? Jack paced a few steps, then stopped, facing away from me. I'm just overwhelmed. I'm always at work, and when I come home, there's just so much noise, so much need. I thought I could handle it, Ellie, but I can't. I'm not cut out for this father stuff. His words stung, but they weren't a surprise. I'd seen it, the distance, the disconnect. So what are you saying? You want out? You want to leave your son? No, not leave, he struggled to find the right words. I just need space, Ellie. I need to breathe. That's when I decided I needed more than just to wait around for Jack to come home. I started studying to become a nail technician. The local community college offered night classes, and my mom agreed to watch Danny. I'd study after putting Danny to bed, practicing on plastic hands until my own fingers ached. Finally, I got my license and set up a little studio right in our home. Converting our rarely used dining room into a salon, I started taking clients during the day. It wasn't easy juggling a new business and a baby, but it gave me a sense of purpose, something that was just mine. The money I made was modest at first, but it grew as my reputation spread. I poured my heart into every set of nails I did, every client I talked to. It wasn't just about the money, it was about being Ellie again, not just Danny's mom or Jack's wife who needed to be handled with kid gloves. When Jack got promoted to head the meat purchase department at the cannery, it meant we had to move. It was a big step up for him, but for me, it felt like starting from scratch all over again. We found a small house to rent in the new city, and I set up my nail salon right at home, hoping to attract some local clients. The adjustment wasn't easy. I spent days walking around the neighborhood, handing out flyers and introducing myself. Slowly, clients started trickling in, drawn in by word of mouth and my promise of a neighborly touch in their beauty routines. But Jack wasn't happy. One evening, after I'd finished with a client, he burst out, "Can't you take that stuff somewhere else? The house is always dusty, smells of your chemicals. I can't even relax in my own home." I was wiping down my table, and I stopped, looking at him. "This is how I make our living too, Jack. My clients are important to me." "Yeah, well, it's annoying," he snapped before storming out, leaving me standing in a silent house that suddenly felt too small for the both of us. Despite the rough start, my salon began to pick up. I was making good money, enough to think about renting a space outside our home. But the thought of starting in a new location, with the risk of not attracting enough clients, weighed heavy on me. One day, I mentioned it to Jack, trying to gauge his thoughts. "I'm thinking about renting a space for the salon. It might be better for us, for the house." He just shrugged, his mind on other things. "Do what you want, Ellie. Just make sure it doesn't come back to bite us." His indifference stung, but it was nothing new. Jack's life was changing too. With his bigger salary, he started taking more care of himself, hitting the gym, buying fancy clothes, and attending social events. Events I was never invited to. One night, he was dressing up for another one of those parties, and I couldn't help myself. I had to ask, "Why don't you ever take me with you?" He looked at me through the mirror, a frown lining his forehead. "Ellie, look at us. You're not cut out for that crowd. They're educated, polished. I can't be explaining my wife who does nails." As he left, the silence of the house wrapped around me. His words echoed in my head, fueling a fire I didn't know I had. I was tired of being the invisible support behind his shiny new life. That fire pushed me to take the leap. I used almost all of my savings, $70,000, to open my own salon in a small but bright space downtown. It was a gamble, a huge one, but I was done being just a background in Jack's life. At first, I worked alone. Long days filled with appointments, my hands constantly in motion. The salon slowly gained a reputation for quality and care, and soon, I had enough clients to hire 2 more technicians. One morning, as I was opening up the salon, Jack came in. It was early, and he looked out of place in his business suit among the pastel colors and nail polish racks. "What are you doing here, Jack?" I asked, surprised to see him. "I heard you hired more people." "Sounds like you're getting serious about this," he said, looking around with a mix of curiosity and disdain. "Yes, I am serious. This salon is going to succeed, with or without your approval," I said firmly, meeting his gaze. Jack smirked, a cold, humorless curl of his lip. "Just be careful, Ellie. Don't come crying to me if it all falls apart." As he left, I turned back to my salon, pride swelling in my chest. This was my place, my dream being built. I didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, I felt ready for whatever challenges it might throw my way. That day started like any other in my salon. I was setting up for an afternoon of appointments, feeling good about where things were headed. Just as I was enjoying a rare quiet moment, the door chimed, and in walked Jack, my husband, with a woman I'd never seen before. She was polished, blonde, and carried herself with an air that filled the room. I thought maybe Jack had brought a new client, so I put on my best professional smile and went to greet them. "Hey Jack, who's this with you?" I said, keeping my tone light and friendly. Jack didn't return my smile. His face was all serious as he introduced her. "Ellie, this is Linda. She's going to be my wife." My heart skipped, stumbled, then plummeted. "You're what?" Linda looked at me, her gaze cold and dismissive. "Yes, I'm the CEO at the cannery where Jack works. We're getting married." The room spun a little. "Married? But Jack, what are you talking about? We're married." Jack's eyes were hard, not like the man I remembered marrying. "Ellie, I'm going to be filing for divorce. Linda and I, we're better suited for each other. She's smart, educated, wealthy." His words felt like punches, each one knocking the wind out of me. Linda chimed in, her voice dripping disdain. "It's rather unpleasant here, being surrounded by such simple pursuits." She looked around my salon with a sneer. "No offense, but I can't stand being next to mere staff who only clean other people's nails." Before I could find the words, she turned sharply on her heel. "You should know, you'll be evicted from your rented house soon. You and your son will have to live in shelters." They laughed together, a sound that seared itself into my memory, and then they left as quickly as they had come. I stood there, frozen, as the door closed behind them. The silence of the salon around me was suffocating. I couldn't stay there, I couldn't breathe. I canceled all my appointments for the day and headed home, the weight of their words crushing me with every step. When I got to the house, it was too quiet. I found a note from Jack on the kitchen counter. He had written that I could stay in the apartment for 2 more months, before I needed to find another place. No apologies, just cold instructions, as if our life together meant nothing. The realization that I was alone, truly alone in this strange city with my son, hit me hard. I slid down against the wall, the paper crumpling in my hand, tears finally breaking through. How had everything come undone so quickly? But as I sat there on the floor, something shifted inside me. Anger simmered up, burning away the initial shock and hurt. I was down, but I wasn't out. Not by a long shot. I had my son to think about, a business that needed me. I focused all my energy on the salon. I started by blasting social media with posts, offers, and before and after photos of my clients. I printed flyers and distributed them all around the neighborhood, offering deals for first-time visits. It didn't take long for the word to spread and for my booking calendar to fill up. We were booked solid for 3 weeks straight, and I had never been busier or more motivated. I moved us into a small apartment right above the salon. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and it was enough. From our windows, we could see the life of the street below, and I liked the closeness of it all, work just downstairs, home up here. It felt compact, manageable. The divorce dragged on, ugly and draining. Jack claimed Danny wasn't his to get out of paying child support. That forced us into a DNA test, which only proved what I already knew: Jack was the father. The court didn't take kindly to his antics and ordered him to pay up for child support. It was a small victory in the midst of a lot of pain. Despite the chaos, the salon became my refuge. I threw myself into my work, arriving early to open up and staying late to clean up, making sure every part of the business ran smoothly. My hands were constantly in motion, painting, filing, shaping. It wasn't just about nails, it was about rebuilding my life, one appointment at a time. One late evening, as I was finishing up with my last client, Maria, she caught me off guard with a question. "Ellie, how do you do it? Stay so strong?" I paused, looking at her through the mirror, a smile tugging at the corner of my lips, despite the tiredness. "What choice do I have, Maria? Life doesn't stop for you, even when it feels like yours has stopped. My boy needs me, and I need to be strong for him." Every day was a battle, but every day also brought small victories. My client base grew, and the community's support was overwhelming. They came for the nails, but they stayed for the camaraderie, and my salon became a little sanctuary not just for me but for many of the women in the area. One afternoon, as I balanced my books, checking the numbers and planning for the future, I realized I was actually doing it, I was making it on my own. Financial independence was within reach, and it tasted sweeter, because I knew every penny was earned through my own sweat and tears. The salon buzzed around me, filled with laughter and chatter, a stark contrast to the quiet of my legal battles and personal struggles. But it was this buzz that kept me going, that reminded me every day that no matter how tough things got, I had a community, a purpose, and a plan. As I locked up for the night, turning the sign to closed, I felt a sense of accomplishment wash over me. The street was quiet, the night settling in. I looked up at the apartment windows where Danny was probably asleep by now, and I felt a surge of determination. It was a regular Tuesday morning when the peace of my salon was disrupted by Laura, one of my regulars who lived in the high-rise across the street. She burst through the door, a look of distress etched across her face that I hadn't seen before. "Ellie, you won't believe what they're doing now," she gasped, clutching her purse tightly against her chest. "What's happened, Laura?" I asked, my hands pausing on the nail file I was holding. "It's the cannery, your ex's place. They've dumped a whole busload of illegal workers into our building, and now they're planning to set up temporary housing right in the park next door." Her voice was shaky, tinged with anger and worry. The news hit me like a truck. Not just because the park was where the neighborhood kids played, including my own son, but because of the sheer disregard for our community. My salon's clients, who were already seated and overhearing our conversation, began murmuring among themselves, their faces clouding over with concern. At that moment, something inside me clicked. I couldn't sit back and let my neighborhood be overrun and unsafe because of the cannery's irresponsible actions. I also saw a chance to right some wrongs Jack had helped bring about. "I'll tell you what we're going to do," I began, my voice growing firmer as I spoke to the room. "We're going to stand up to them. We're going to show them that they can't just push us around. We live here. Our kids play here. We matter." Heads nodded, and the room filled with a new energy, a collective resolve. I'm going to organize a meeting here, tomorrow. We'll plan our next steps. Tell your neighbors, bring your friends. We're stronger together, I declared. Over the next few days, I turned my salon into a makeshift community center. We created signs, drafted petitions, and planned peaceful protests. I led the charge, fueled not just by my civic duty, but by a deep-seated desire to challenge Jack and the destructive path he was part of. Then, one afternoon as we were preparing signs for another rally, Jack showed up at the salon, Linda in tow. They both looked unusually meek, a stark contrast to their usual haughty demeanor. "Ellie, can we talk?" Jack asked, glancing around at the bustling salon-turned-activist hub. I stepped closer, crossing my arms. "Sure, Jack. What's so important?" He glanced at Linda, who hesitated before pulling out an envelope. "We want to make you an offer, Ellie. This should cover all your troubles. Just stop this protest, let the cannery do its business." I peeked into the envelope she handed me. It was filled with $100,000. My heart raced, but my resolve didn't waver. "You think you can buy me off? Buy off our safety and well-being?" I scoffed, pushing the envelope back into her hands. "You can keep your dirty money. I'm not stopping until you pull back your plans for the park and treat your workers right." Jack's face hardened. "You're making a big mistake, Ellie." "No, Jack," I shot back, a steely edge to my voice. "The only mistake was thinking you could come here and push us around. I suggest you take your offer, turn around, and get out of this city while you still can." Linda, her face a mask of disbelief, turned on her heel, with Jack trailing behind her. They knew they were defeated, at least for now. It all escalated when Jack and Linda, blinded by greed, began tearing down trees in our local park to build housing for illegal workers. I couldn't just stand by. I took to social media, aired the issue on local TV, and the uproar that followed was louder than anything our town had ever seen. The story caught fire, and soon, even the governor was knocking on our door, or rather, the cannery's door. The state sent inspectors and the immigration service, who found more wrongs than rights. The plant was slapped with fines so steep that Jack and Linda's empire crumbled under the weight of legal debts. They were forced to sell the factory, and the new owners turned it around, offering legitimate jobs with decent pay to city residents. As for me, the community started calling me a hero, though I never felt like one. I was just a woman who loved her neighborhood enough to fight for it. 2 years after the dust had settled, Jack showed up at my salon. He was a shadow of the man I once knew, tired, older, and worn down by his choices. "Ellie, can we talk?" His voice was low, hesitant. I nodded, leading him to a private corner. "What is it, Jack?" I'm sorry, Ellie. For everything. I was wrong, so wrong. Can you ever forgive me?" His eyes searched mine, looking for a hint of the softness he once knew. "Jack, I forgave you a long time ago, for my sake, not yours. But forgive and forget are two different things. What we had is over, and it's staying that way." He nodded, a resigned slump to his shoulders. "Can I see Danny? I want to try to be a part of his life again." I hesitated, thinking of our son who had grown so much in the absence of his father. "I'll talk to Danny about it. If he wants to see you, then I won't stop him. But it'll be his decision." Later, when I asked Danny, he shook his head, his decision firm. "I don't know him, Mom. I don't want to." Jack had made his bed, and now he had to lie in it, far away from us. In the meantime, the salon grew into a chain. I wasn't just fixing nails anymore, I was setting standards in the beauty industry. The profits were more than I ever dreamed, but what truly fulfilled me was planning to open a network of schools teaching manicure techniques. Danny, now in high school, had taken up art, his talent blooming under the care of his teachers and his proud mom. Watching him at his easel, brush in hand, creating worlds more colorful and kind than the one we'd fought so hard to mend, I knew I'd made the right decisions. My boy was going to be all right. We both were.